Well, after losing the presidential election, the Republican Party has been trying to figure out what they did wrong and how they did not connect with young people, women, and especially minorities. Will these groups ever identify with the GOP? Joining me now, conservative columnist, former mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio, former Secretary of State in Ohio, Ken Blackwell. Ken, good to see you again. This has got to be something that you have given a tremendous amount of thought to as a minority and as a conservative and as a Republican. What's your answer? What's the solution?
Well, look, Tom, politics is about numbers. When you come down to it, you win elections when you get 50 plus 1, and we're not being responsive to the demographic explosion that has taken place as a consequence of lower birth rates among whites and higher birth rates among Hispanics and African Americans. And as a consequence, what we've done, we haven't made our case to these growing demographic groups, whether we're talking about the millennials or Hispanics and blacks. And as a consequence, we're not getting the numbers that we need to win elections. We don't have to change our principles, but we do have to place the order. We do have to make the case. And if we don't do that, we will be a minority party in national elections for some time. You must, as well as your viewers, appreciate the fact that right now 30 of the 50 governors in this country are Republican. Many of the houses of representatives and the state Senate houses or chambers are dominated by Republican majority. So we at one level, we are getting the message out. In national elections, we haven't been able to put together the numbers, and we must attend to it or resign ourselves to not winning the presidency for a long time.
Yeah, well, you talk about the numbers. So is it the fact that, and a lot of people, especially on the left, by the way, are saying, you Republicans need to change your message. But do Republicans need to change their message? Or is it, like you said, numbers where the Obama campaign was phenomenal in identifying where their voters and their support was and getting them to the polls? Was it just simply mechanical, operational sort of miss as opposed to the message missing?
Well, look, a lot of it was as a consequence of what I call a technology gap. In 2004, there was parity among the parties in terms of the use of modern technology. Since that time, the Democrats have gotten an advantage. But it's not all technical. Some of it is basically how we how we tell our story. We don't have to change our message, but we do, in fact, have to market it. We do have to place the order with these voting groups. Hispanics, there's no reason why we shouldn't start from where George W. Bush was with Hispanics, and that is at 44% of the vote take. Yeah. We're going backwards from that, and that has to do with message.
Well, what do I know? I'm just your average white guy, but it seems to me that the minority neighborhoods, black, Hispanic, doesn't matter, are conservative, church-going. Fiscally, they don't want their money wasted. They're family-oriented. They sure sound like the Republican mold, but they won't get involved. And I have a friend of mine out in California that's Hispanic who says, I feel like I'm a Republican, but they don't want me. And I yelled at him and said, why don't you join, and maybe you can change it from inside rather than standing on the outside throwing tomatoes.
Look, and that's what we have to realize, that this is a dynamic process. We have the most vibrant democratic republic in the history of the world, and we're only 237 years old. But the reality is, it's a two-party system. And let's talk about blacks for a second. You know, back in the 30s and the 20s, blacks were predominantly Republican. in 1960 in the Nixon-Kennedy race, going into that race, there was a dead split, an even split of blacks who were Democrats, blacks who were Republicans. By the end of that election, the divide was 60-40. But we have to tell our message. We wouldn't have had the great civil rights acts in this country if it hadn't been from a working majority of Democrats and Republicans, because Democrats were the Dixiecrats at that time. So we have to understand it's a dynamic process. We have to tell our message. And you're absolutely right. People instinctively like freedom, but people can get hooked on the welfare state or the nanny state. And we have to basically say, look, we are the party of smaller government and individual liberty. We are the party that recognizes that freedom, that free men and free women operating in free markets can do just about everything. Well, and that's the only way that we're going to grow our economy and get people back to work.
And that freedom loving should be about everybody. And the nanny state, unfortunately, it doesn't matter, black, white, in between. More and more people are getting hooked on that. So, well, parties change, and I'm glad you're there to help the process. Ken Blackwell, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
You bet. Still ahead, why are some analysts saying the housing market is recovering when so many homeowners are still underwater? And the Powerball jackpot winners beat the odds and are now going to share hundreds of millions of dollars. But for most of America, our lottery's just another government money grab. That's coming up.